The dumpster reeked of rotting dreams, and my hands shook as I tore through slimy bags under the flicker of a dying streetlight. I wasn't looking for food, not yet, but for anything I could sell to keep the eviction notice at bay. Then I heard her voice, sharp and familiar, slicing through the alley's damp air. "Ellie, what the hell are you doing?" I froze, a half-rotted apple slipping from my grip. My heart jackhammered as I turned to face her. Lila Monroe, my first love, my only love, now the goddamned mayor of New York City. Her sleek black hair caught the streetlight's glow, and that polished blazer screamed power, but her eyes, they were the same ones I drowned in 10 years ago, before she walked away. "Mayor Monroe," I said, my voice a bitter rasp, wiping my hands on my torn jeans. "Fancy seeing you slumming it." I wanted to sound tough, but my throat burned with shame. Here I was, Ellie Harper, 28, a ghost of the artist I'd once been, scavenging in an alley while Lila stood there, pristine, the woman who'd broken me. She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the cracked pavement. "Ellie, why are you?" Her voice softened, but I caught the pity in it, and it stung worse than the cold. "This isn't you." "Isn't it?" I snapped, my chest tight. "You don't get to decide who I am anymore. You left, remember?" The words spilled out, raw and jagged, pulling up memories of our last fight, her ambition, my stubborn pride, the love we'd let bleed out. Lila's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "I didn't leave you to end up like this." Her voice cracked, and for a second, I saw the girl I'd met at 18, the one who'd kissed me under a Brooklyn bridge and promised we'd conquer the world together. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd climbed to the top while I'd fallen through the cracks. I turned back to the dumpster, my hands trembling as I shoved aside a bag of moldy bread. "Go back to your city hall, Lila. I don't need your charity." But she didn't move, and the weight of her gaze burned into me, stirring something I thought I'd buried years ago. 10 years earlier, we'd been inseparable. Lila was a poli-sci major with big dreams, her laugh bright enough to light up our dingy Brooklyn apartment. I was the painter, always smudged with acrylics, sketching her face in every canvas. We'd lie awake at night, whispering about a future where she'd change the world and I'd capture it in color. But her hunger for power grew, and I couldn't keep up. She wanted structure, stability. I wanted chaos, creation. Our fights got uglier, her words sharper, until one night she packed a bag and left me with nothing but a half-finished portrait and a broken heart. Now, here she was, the mayor, while I was homeless, jobless, digging through trash to survive. The irony was cruel. I'd followed her rise in the news. Lila Monroe, the youngest mayor in New York history, a queer icon, a beacon of progress. Every headline felt like a knife, reminding me of what we'd lost. "Ellie, let me help you," she said, her voice low, urgent. "Please." I laughed, a hollow sound. "Help? You think a check from your campaign fund will fix this?" I gestured at the alley, at myself, at the wreckage of my life. "You don't get to swoop in and play hero." Her eyes flashed with something, anger, maybe, or guilt. "I'm not trying to play hero. I didn't know things got this bad for you." She reached out, her hand hovering like she wanted to touch me but didn't dare. I stepped back, my sneakers crunching on broken glass. "You didn't want to know. You moved on, Lila." I didn't. The truth hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I'd loved her too much, and when she left, I'd unraveled. Lost my art, my drive, my everything. A siren wailed in the distance, and Lila glanced over her shoulder, her polished facade slipping for a moment. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes, she said, almost to herself. "But I can't just leave you here." "Then don't," I said, reckless, the words spilling before I could stop them. "Stay. Talk. Like we used to." It was a stupid thing to say, but I was tired, hungry, and the sight of her was ripping open old wounds. Her phone buzzed, and she silenced it without looking. "Okay," she said softly. but not here. Come with me. I wanted to say no, to cling to my pride, but the cold was seeping into my bones, and her voice was a lifeline I couldn't resist. I nodded, and she led me out of the alley, her presence a painful reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I still wanted. We walked in silence, the city's pulse thrumming around us. She took me to a small diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like regret. We sat across from each other, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a failure, but as Ellie, the girl she'd once loved. "Why didn't you reach out?" she asked, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. I would have helped. I stared at the table, tracing a scratch in the wood. "Because I didn't want your pity. I wanted you." The admission slipped out, raw and unguarded, and her breath caught. "Ellie," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't. Just tell me how you got here. Mayor of New York. What happened to you?" I needed to know, to understand how the girl who danced with me in our kitchen had become this untouchable figure. She leaned back, her eyes distant. "I worked hard, sacrificed everything. Friends, family, us." Her voice broke on the last word, and I realized she wasn't as untouchable as she seemed. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed above us, and I felt the weight of a decade's worth of pain and longing. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was a collision of past and present, and I didn't know if it would save me or destroy me all over again. Lila's confession hung in the air, a fragile thread connecting us across the diner's chipped formica table. Her eyes, once so familiar, now carried the weight of years spent climbing a ladder I'd never even touched. I wanted to hate her for it, but the ache in my chest wouldn't let me. "You sacrificed us," I said, my voice low, barely steady. "You chose your career over me." The words tasted like ash, but they needed to be said. I'd spent years replaying our breakup, each memory a fresh cut. She flinched, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. "It wasn't that simple, Ellie. You know that. You were so wild, so free. I couldn't keep up with you and my dreams at the same time." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Wild? I was in love, Lila. I was painting, creating, living for us. You were the one who wanted to tame the world, not me." My hands shook, and I tucked them under the table, hiding the dirt under my nails. Her gaze dropped, and for a moment, she looked like the 18-year-old I'd met at a campus open mic, her voice trembling as she read poetry about revolution. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared I'd lose myself if I stayed with you. You were so intense. Your art, your passion, it was beautiful, but it consumed you. I didn't know how to fit into that." I wanted to scream that she hadn't even tried, but the exhaustion in her voice stopped me. She wasn't the invincible mayor right now. She was Lila, the girl who'd cried in my arms when her mom kicked her out for being queer. "So you left," I said instead. "And now you're the hero of New York, while I'm this." I gestured at my frayed jacket, my unwashed hair. "You're not this," she said fiercely, leaning forward. "You're Ellie Harper, the most talented person I've ever known. You're still in there, somewhere." Her words hit like a punch, stirring a spark I thought had died years ago. I wanted to believe her, but the last decade had taught me hope was a dangerous thing. "You don't know me anymore," I said, but my voice wavered. "Then let me," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "Let me help you get back on your feet. Not as charity, but because I owe you that much." I stared at her, torn between pride and desperation. The diner's clock ticked loudly, marking the seconds I didn't have an answer. Finally, I nodded, just once, and her shoulders relaxed slightly. She paid for the coffee and led me to her car, a sleek black SUV that screamed privilege. I hesitated, the smell of leather and her faint perfume overwhelming after the alley's stench. "Where are we going?" I asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "My place," she said, starting the engine. You can shower, eat, sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Her apartment was a world away from the Brooklyn walk-up we'd shared. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of Manhattan that made my stomach twist with envy. Jesus, Lila, I muttered, standing in the middle of her pristine living room. You really made it. She didn't smile. It's just a place. She handed me a towel and pointed to the bathroom. Take your time. The hot water felt like a betrayal, washing away the grime, but not the shame. I stood under the spray, letting it burn my skin, trying to piece together how I'd gone from a promising artist to a woman scavenging for survival. Lila's soap smelled like lavender, and I hated how it reminded me of her. When I emerged, wrapped in a too-soft robe, she was in the kitchen, heating up leftovers. It's just pasta, she said, setting a plate in front of me. But it's warm. I ate in silence, the food heavy in my stomach. She watched me, her expression unreadable. What happened, Ellie? She asked finally. After I left. I pushed the plate away, the question too big to answer in one bite. You left and I fell apart, I said simply. Lost my scholarship, my apartment, my will to paint. Ended up on the streets. That's the short version. Her face crumpled, and for a second, I thought she might cry. I didn't know, she whispered. I should have checked on you. Yeah, well, you were busy becoming mayor, I said, the edge in my voice softer now. I was too tired to fight. She reached across the table, her hand stopping short of mine. I'm here now, she said, and I'm not going anywhere. I didn't believe her. Not yet. But the warmth of her apartment, the fullness in my stomach, and the way her eyes held mine made me want to. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something like hope, fragile and dangerous. She showed me to a guest room, the bed so soft it felt like a trap. Get some rest, she said, lingering in the doorway. We'll talk more in the morning. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her words echoing in my head. I wanted to trust her, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when I'd spent a decade picking up the pieces she'd left behind. Morning light streamed through Lila's guest room window, painting the walls in hues I hadn't noticed in years. I woke with a start, my body stiff from sleeping on an actual bed instead of cardboard. For a moment, I forgot where I was, until her voice called from the kitchen, soft but insistent. Ellie, breakfast's ready. I pulled on the clean clothes she'd left me, sweatpants and a t-shirt that smelled like her, and shuffled out, my bare feet cold against her hardwood floor. Lila stood at the counter, pouring coffee, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked less like a mayor and more like the girl I'd loved, and that made it harder to keep my walls up. Sit, she said, sliding a plate of eggs and toast toward me. You look like you haven't eaten a real meal in months. I didn't argue, but the food felt like a bribe. What's the catch, Lila? I asked, poking at the eggs. You don't just take in strays out of the goodness of your heart. Her lips pressed into a thin line. No catch. I can't stand seeing you like this. She sat across from me, her coffee untouched. I want to help you get back to who you were. Who I was is gone, I said, my voice flat. You don't get to play fairy godmother and fix me. But even as I said it, I felt the pull of her sincerity, the way her eyes searched mine for the girl she'd known. Then let me help you find who you are now, she said. You're still Ellie. You're still an artist. I snorted, pushing the plate away. An artist? I haven't touched a brush in years. My hands shake too much, and my head's too loud. I didn't tell her about the nights I'd tried to sketch on scraps of paper, only to rip them up when the lines came out wrong. She leaned forward, her voice steady. I have a friend who runs an art program for at-risk youth. They need teachers. You could start there, Ellie. Small steps. I stared at her, the idea both tempting and terrifying. Why do you care? I asked, my voice breaking. You walked away. Why now? Because I never stopped loving you, she said, the words so quiet I almost missed them. My heart stuttered, and I looked away, unable to hold her gaze. She didn't get to say that, not after everything. Don't, I said, standing up. You don't get to drop that on me like it changes anything. I paced the room, my hands clenched. You left me, Lila. You chose your big dreams over us, and I paid the price. She stood too, her face flushed. You think it was easy for me? I was 19, Ellie. I was scared, and I thought I had to choose between you and my future. I was wrong, okay? I was wrong, and I've regretted it every day since. Her admission hit me like a tidal wave, and I sank back into the chair, my anger deflating. Then why didn't you come back? I whispered. I tried, she said, her voice raw. I called, I wrote. You'd moved, changed your number. You disappeared. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration etched into every line of her face. I thought you hated me. I did, sometimes. But mostly I'd hated myself. I didn't disappear, I said. I just fell. The word felt inadequate for the spiral that had consumed me: grief, addiction, homelessness. I'd lost everything, and now here she was, offering me a lifeline I wasn't sure I deserved. She sat back down, closer this time. Let me help you climb back up. Please, Ellie. I wanted to say no, to protect the fragile shell I'd built around myself. But her eyes were so earnest, so full of the love we'd once shared, that I couldn't. Okay, I said finally. But I'm not promising anything. Her smile was small but real, and it warmed something deep inside me. She spent the morning making calls, setting up an interview with her friend at the art program. I listened, half-dazed, as she talked about schedules and resources, her efficiency both impressive and alienating. This was the Lila who'd become mayor, the one who got things done. By noon, she'd arranged for me to meet her friend, Maria, at a community center in Brooklyn. It's not glamorous, Lila warned as we drove across the bridge. But it's a start. The center was a squat brick building, its walls covered in colorful murals. Maria, a wiry woman in her 40s with a warm smile, greeted us at the door. Lila says you're an artist, she said, looking me over without judgment. We could use someone like you. I hesitated, the weight of my past failures pressing down. I haven't painted in a long time, I admitted. Maria shrugged. Doesn't matter. The kids just need someone who gets it. You start tomorrow. Lila squeezed my arm, a silent encouragement, and I felt a spark of something, purpose, maybe, that I hadn't felt in years. But as we left the center, doubt crept back in. Could I really do this? Could I trust Lila not to break me again? That night, back at her apartment, I found a sketch pad and pencils on the guest room desk. A note in Lila's handwriting read, "For when you're ready." I stared at the blank page, my fingers itching, but I didn't draw. Not yet. The community center smelled of paint and teenage angst, a mix that hit me like a memory as I stepped into the art room. A dozen kids, ranging from 12 to 17, sprawled across tables, their hands smudged with charcoal and acrylics. Maria introduced me as Ms. Ellie, and I cringed at the title, feeling like a fraud. Just Ellie? I corrected, my voice rougher than I meant. The kids eyed me warily, their gazes sharp with the kind of suspicion only trauma breeds. I recognized it. I'd worn that look myself. So, what do you guys do here? I asked, clutching the sketch pad Lila had given me like a shield. Whatever we want, a girl with blue hair and a nose ring said, her tone defiant. Maria says art's for feeling, not rules. I nodded, relaxing a fraction. Fair enough. Let's see what you've got. I moved between tables, peering at their work, bold, messy, raw. A boy named Javier sketched a cityscape that felt alive, while a quiet kid named Sam painted a storm in shades of gray. Their art was unpolished but honest, and it stirred something in me I thought I'd lost. By the end of the session, I was exhausted but buzzing. I hadn't painted, but I'd talked, listened, even laughed. For the first time in years, I felt useful. Lila picked me up, her eyes searching mine as I climbed into her car. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Good," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. "They're real, like I used to be." "You still are," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You just forgot." I didn't argue, but I didn't agree either. We drove back to her apartment in silence, the city blurring past. That night, I opened the sketch pad and drew a single line, a curve that could have been the edge of Lila's jaw or the arc of a bridge. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. I taught at the center 3 days a week, guiding the kids through their projects while dodging their questions about my past. Lila was busy with mayoral duties, press conferences, budget meetings, but she made time to check in, leaving me notes or bringing takeout when she got home late. Her apartment was starting to feel less like a hotel and more like something else. I didn't dare name it. One evening, she came home with a stack of flyers for an upcoming art showcase. "The kids' work is being featured," she said, her eyes bright. "Maria wants you to submit something too." I froze, the idea like a weight on my chest. "I don't have anything to show," I said, my voice tight. "I told you I don't paint anymore." "You could," she said, stepping closer. "I've seen you with that sketch pad. You're starting again, Ellie. I know you are." Her faith in me was suffocating. "You don't get it," I snapped. "It's not just about picking up a brush. It's everything I lost when you left. My art was tied to you, Lila. To us." She looked stricken, but she didn't back down. "Then make new art. Make it about you, not us. You're more than what we were." Her words echoed in my head long after she went to bed. I sat up, staring at the sketch pad, my fingers tracing that single line I'd drawn. Could I do it? Could I create something that wasn't steeped in pain? The next day at the center, Javier showed me a new sketch, a portrait of his mom, her face tired but fierce. "She's why I draw," he said quietly. "Even when it hurts." I nodded, his words hitting too close to home. That night I started painting. Not on canvas, but on the back of an old poster I found in Lila's recycling bin. It was messy, abstract, all jagged lines and muted colors, but it felt like mine. Like me. When I showed it to Maria, she didn't hesitate. "This goes in the showcase," she said. "It's raw, Ellie. It's you." The showcase was a week away, and the kids were electric with nerves and excitement. I was too, though I didn't admit it. Lila helped me frame my piece, her hand steady as she adjusted the corners. "I'm proud of you," she said, and I hated how much those words meant. The night of the showcase, the community center was packed. My painting hung alongside the kids, its rough edges stark under the gallery lights. I stood in a corner, sipping cheap wine, feeling exposed. Lila found me, her presence grounding. "You did this," she said, nodding at the crowd. "You're giving them something real." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt lingered. Could I keep this up? Could I rebuild a life from scraps? And what did it mean that Lila was here, woven into every step of it? The showcase was a blur of faces and voices, the community center alive with chatter and clinking glasses. My painting drew a small crowd, their murmurs a mix of curiosity and praise. I stood off to the side, my stomach knotted, watching strangers dissect the piece I'd poured my brokenness into. Javier's portrait of his mom sold for $200, and he grinned at me, his pride infectious. But when someone offered to buy my painting, I froze. It wasn't about the money, it was about letting go of something that felt like a piece of me. Lila was everywhere that night, shaking hands, charming donors, her mayoral polish in full force. But her eyes kept finding mine, a silent anchor in the chaos. When the crowd thinned, she pulled me aside. "You were incredible tonight," she said, her voice warm. "This is just the beginning, Ellie." I wanted to believe her, but the weight of the past was heavy. "What if I can't keep this up?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "What if I fall again?" "You won't," she said, her hand brushing mine. And if you stumble, I'll be here. Her touch sent a jolt through me, and I pulled back, my heart racing. You can't promise that, I said. You're the mayor. You've got a city to run, people to impress. I'm just me. You're not just anything, she said fiercely. You're Ellie Harper and you're enough. Her words cracked something open in me, and I turned away, blinking back tears. The rest of the night, I helped clean up, avoiding her. I wasn't ready for the hope she offered, not when it came with the risk of losing her again. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The showcase got press, and my painting was mentioned in a local art blog. Maria offered me a permanent part-time job at the center, and I took it, the steady paycheck a lifeline. I moved out of Lila's apartment into a tiny studio in Brooklyn, paid for with my first few paychecks. It was bare, but it was mine. Lila visited often, bringing coffee or takeout, her presence a comfort I both craved and feared. We talked about everything, her campaign struggles, my fears of failing the kids, the way the city had changed us both. But we never talked about us, not directly. The unspoken question hung between us. Could we ever be more than this fragile truce? One night, after a long day at the center, I invited her to my studio. It was the first time I'd let her into my space, and I was nervous, my hands fidgeting as I showed her my new sketches. They're not much, I said, but they're mine. They're beautiful, she said, her fingers tracing the lines of a half-finished portrait. It was her, unmistakably her, though I hadn't meant to draw her. My face burned, and she smiled, soft and knowing. Why do you keep helping me? I asked, my voice raw. What do you want from this? She set the sketch down, her eyes meeting mine. I want you to be happy, Ellie. With or without me. But I'd rather it be with me. My breath caught, and I stepped closer, the air between us electric. You hurt me, I said, the truth spilling out. You broke me, Lila. I know, she whispered, her voice thick with regret. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. I wanted to kiss her, to erase the years and the pain, but I didn't. Instead, I took her hand, her warmth grounding me. I don't know if I can do this again, I said, but I want to try. Her smile was like sunlight, and for the first time, I let myself believe in a future where we could heal. We spent the night talking, laughing, remembering the good before the bad. It wasn't a promise, but it was a start. The next morning, I woke to a text from Maria. The center had been offered a grant, partly because of a showcase's success. She wanted me to lead a new program, teaching art to adults like me, people who'd lost their way. I stared at the message, my heart swelling with possibility. Lila was still there, sipping coffee in my tiny kitchen. You're doing it, Ellie, she said, her pride unmistakable. You're coming back. I wasn't back, not yet, but I was closer than I'd ever been. And with her beside me, I felt like I could keep going. My new studio smelled of fresh paint and possibility, a stark contrast to the alley where Lila had found me. The adult art program launched with a small group, 5 people, all carrying their own scars, their hands hesitant but eager. I taught them to draw from memory, to let their pain spill onto the page, and in doing so, I found myself healing too. Each stroke of charcoal felt like a step away from the dumpster, toward something whole. Lila was a constant presence, weaving in and out of my days. She dropped by the center with lunch, her mayoral schedule somehow bending to fit me in. We were careful, tiptoeing around the edges of what we could be. But every touch, every shared laugh, felt like a brick laid in a foundation we were rebuilding. One evening, she invited me to a city hall event, a fundraiser for community programs, including the one I worked for. You don't have to come, she said, her voice cautious. But I'd love for you to see what I do. I went, dressed in a borrowed blazer that felt like a costume. The ballroom was a sea of suits and smiles, and Lila moved through it with ease, her charisma magnetic. I watched her speak, her words about equity and opportunity ringing with sincerity. She was a force, and I felt both proud and small in her shadow. After her speech, she found me by the bar, her eyes bright. "You okay?" she asked, her hand grazing my arm. "It's a lot," I admitted, sipping water to steady myself. You're incredible, Lila. But this world, it's not mine." "It could be," she said, her voice low. "You're doing just as much good as I am, in your own way." I shook my head, the gap between us feeling wider than ever. "You're changing the city. I'm just teaching a few people to draw." She took my hand, her grip firm. "Don't do that. Don't diminish what you're building. Those people in your class, they're finding themselves because of you." Her words stayed with me, and when we left the event, I asked her to walk with me through the city. We wandered the streets, the lights of Manhattan reflecting off the river. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of needing you again. Scared of losing you." She stopped, turning to face me. "I'm scared too," she said. "But I'm not going anywhere this time. I promise." Her promise felt like a lifeline, but it also terrified me. I'd built my life around surviving without her. Could I trust her to stay? We stood there, the city humming around us, and I leaned in, kissing her softly. It was tentative, a question more than a statement, but her response was sure, her lips warm and familiar. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance. I painted more, my work growing bolder, more confident. Lila hung one of my pieces in her office, a quiet declaration of her faith in me. But the press started noticing her frequent visits to the center, and whispers of a mystery woman began circling. One tabloid ran a blurry photo of us together, speculating about the mayor's new flame. Lila brushed it off, but I saw the strain in her eyes. "This is my life," she said one night, her voice tired. "The scrutiny, the rumors. If we're going to do this, you need to be ready for it." "I don't care about them," I said, meaning it. "I just want you." She smiled, but it was tinged with worry. "It's not that simple. My team's already freaking out about optics. A mayor dating someone who is," she trailed off, but I knew what she meant. "Someone who is digging through trash," I finished, my voice sharp. "Say it, Lila." She winced. "That's not what I mean. I don't want you to get hurt." But the world didn't care about our intentions. A week later, a gossip column published a hit piece, digging up my past, homelessness, addiction, all laid bare. They called me a liability to Lila's campaign, a stain on her pristine image. I read it in my studio, my hands shaking, the words cutting deeper than any knife. Lila found me there, her face pale. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't think they'd go this far. I wanted to scream, to tell her she should have known, but I saw the guilt in her eyes. "This is why I didn't want your help," I said, my voice hollow. "I'm not good for you, Lila. I never was." "That's not true," she said, stepping closer. "You're the best thing in my life." But I wasn't sure I believed her. The world saw me as a failure, and maybe they were right. The tabloids' words burned into me, each one a reminder of the gap between Lila's world and mine. I stopped going to the center for a few days, hiding in my studio, my paintbrushes untouched. Lila called, texted, even showed up at my door, but I couldn't face her. Not when I felt like a weight dragging her down. On the fourth day, Maria showed up, her no-nonsense energy filling my tiny space. "You're not quitting," she said, tossing a sketchpad onto my bed. "Those kids need you. And you need them." "I'm a mess, Maria," I said, my voice raw. "The whole city knows it now." "So what?" she said, crossing her arms. "You think you're the only one with a past? Get up, Ellie. You're stronger than this." Her words were a spark, and I clung to them. I went back to the center, throwing myself into the work. The kids didn't care about the headlines, they cared about my feedback, my encouragement. Javier showed me a new painting, bold and vibrant, and I saw myself in it, broken but fighting. Lila came to the center a week later, her face drawn but determined. "We need to talk," she said, pulling me into a quiet corner. "I'm not letting you push me away." I crossed my arms, my heart pounding. "Your campaign's tanking because of me." "I saw the polls, Lila. They're tearing you apart." "Let them," she said, her voice fierce. "I don't care about the polls. I care about you." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "You can't throw away everything you've built for me. I'm not worth it." She grabbed my shoulders, her grip tight. "Don't you dare say that. You're worth everything, Ellie. You always have been." Her words broke me, and I let her pull me into a hug, her warmth seeping into the cracks of my doubt. "I love you," she whispered, and this time, I let myself believe it. We decided to face the storm together. Lila held a press conference, addressing the rumors head-on. "My personal life is just that, personal," she said, her voice steady. "But I will say this. Ellie Harper is an incredible woman, an artist, and a teacher who's changing lives. I'm proud to know her." The backlash didn't stop, but it softened. Supporters rallied, sharing stories of the center's impact, of my work with the kids. My paintings started selling, small but steady, and I poured the money back into the program. Lila stood by me, her presence a quiet strength. Months later, we stood on the Brooklyn Bridge, the city sparkling below us. It was the same spot where we'd kissed as teenagers, dreaming of a future we couldn't yet see. "We made it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Through all of it." She took my hand, her smile soft. "We're just getting started." I looked at her, at the woman who'd broken me and helped me rebuild, and I knew she was right. Our love wasn't perfect. It was scarred, messy, hard-won, but it was ours. And in a city that could chew you up and spit you out, we'd found a way to hold on. My art flourished, each piece a testament to survival. The center grew, and so did I, teaching others to find their voice through color and line. Lila's campaign recovered, her authenticity resonating with a city hungry for truth. We weren't just a mayor and an artist, or an ex and a lost soul. We were two women who'd chosen each other, against all odds. As we walked off the bridge, hand in hand, I felt the weight of my past lift, replaced by something lighter. Hope. Not the fragile kind, but the kind forged in fire, strong enough to carry us forward. Together, we'd rewrite our story one brushstroke, one day, one love at a time.